Episode 67B, The Murphys' Honeymoon and Jean's Acadian Ancestors. Although Canada is another country, it is relatively nearby to New England and to Boston. So starting as a boy, I have had many trips to Canada. Following are two of those stories that go with my visits north. The Murphys' Honeymoon. On Saturday, February 17th, 1962, Jean and I were married at Blessed Sacrament Church in Cambridge. That marriage was the best thing that ever happened to me. I lucked out with my wife and my marriage. We were well matched. Jean was an accomplished artist and a natural wife and mother. We loved each other fiercely, and we both wanted lots of kids, and she acted as a necessary brake pedal on my unbridled opportunity seeking throughout my life. She often would say to me, "Don't do anything crazy today." We had a very small reception, and the next day went on a honeymoon to Quebec. We stayed overnight in Nashua, New Hampshire, and went to early Mass, then drove on I-89 into Vermont. Jean did not know how to drive. I was teaching her, and the I-89 interstate presented an opportunity for her to practice. It had little traffic on it that day. The little Fiat had a stick shift, and after a little tutoring, I let her drive on the straight highway while I read the Sunday Globe. Everything was going well. She was feeling confident about her driving, as was I. All of a sudden, Jean screamed. I looked up as we drove into a huge snowbank. The interstate was unfinished, and the plows had pushed the snow into the road's end. There were signs warning drivers to go either right or left, but neither of us saw them. The midget Fiat was buried deep into the snow. After I calmed Jean down, I attempted to back out unsuccessfully. I did not have a shovel, and we were stuck but good. However, God was with us. Almost immediately, a tow truck on the way to another job stopped and pulled us out, and after I told him we were just married and on our honeymoon, he would not take our money. Hooray! We cleared customs at the border at Highgate Springs and then drove into Montreal. We stayed a couple of days in Montreal and then went east toward Quebec City along the St. Lawrence River. It was very cold. We stopped at Rimouski on the river where Jean's ancestral Michaud family once lived, and then we went on to Quebec City. We had heard that Quebec's Frontenac Hotel was one of the best hotels in the world, and we visited it. It was grand, as my Irish grandmother Kate Murphy would say, but out of our price range. We booked an ordinary hotel room and did the tourist thing. Since 1894, Quebec has put on its Quebec Winter Carnival during January and February, ending on Ash Wednesday and Lent. It is the coldest time of the year. The temperatures were always below 0 Fahrenheit. Giant snowmen, ice canoe races, hockey games, skiing, lots of alcohol and music were all available during Carnival. One of Quebec's historic sites is the Plains of Abraham. The fate of New France was decided on September 13, 1759, in Quebec City on the Plains of Abraham. The Battle of Quebec pitted French troops against English, with their respective generals Louis-Joseph de Montcalm and James Wolfe leading the charge. The British won, and New France became English. Jean and I took a horse-drawn, open-air sleigh ride with Matisse, a rotund, red-faced, nose-running Quebecois who spoke almost no English, but he talked to his horse all the time. It was 10 below 0. He was a real character. We snuggled together in the back seat under authentic bearskin rugs as he drove us through the battlefield on the Plains of Abraham. A fond memory that still makes me smile 63 years later. After we left Quebec, we went to Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré Shrine in Beaupré. Jean's paternal ancestor, Pierre Michaud, helped to build that church in the 1600s. We loved the whole trip, but we needed to go back at home and get back to work. Jean's Acadian Ancestors. My wife, Jean Michaud Murphy's family, historical patriarch, was Pierre Michaud. Pierre came to New France from Fontenay-le-Comte, France, in the early 1600s. Jean and I visited Fontenay on a long vacation to France once. The Fontenay Parish Church has a plaque on its wall honoring Pierre Michaud. Pierre settled on the Isle of Cranes just north across the St. Lawrence River from the Gaspé Peninsula, mentioned in podcast episode number 67A. Acadians were a subset of French Canadians. Most Acadians lived in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, or New Brunswick, but there was an Acadian population on or near the Gaspé Peninsula also. During the French and Indian War, the British deported the Acadians about 1755 through 1764. This event was known as the Great Expulsion. It was the forced removal of Acadians from their homes to make way for the more loyal English-speaking population. Most Acadians went to Louisiana, a French colony, and those folks became the well-known and unique Cajuns. Pierre had moved upriver before that terrible event to the Rimouski area of the Quebec province, and therefore his progeny escaped that expulsion. We have been told by Pierre's Maine and Quebec descendants that Pierre Michaud was part of the construction of the original Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré shrine. The border between Canada and the USA was moved many times. Northern Maine, south of Rimouski, was the family home for the Michauds. It was sometimes in Canada and sometimes in the USA. Jean's father, Gus Michaud, my father-in-law, worked at lumber camps there as a boy. He was born in St. Agathe, Maine, right on the Canadian border. Jean was a member of Pierre Michaud's Descendants Family Association. She went sometimes to Madawaska, Maine, to the association's annual meetings, dragging along her non-frog Hibernian husband. There's another Canadian story on episode 67. This is Rod Murphy. Thank you for viewing or listening to my podcast episodes. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, and if you so choose, I ask you to send a good review and or refer a friend who might be interested in this Old Boston podcast series. Again, my thanks.